Hello, everybody. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. I am here with the Fantasy Grounds development team. We have two individuals that are very important, and they are the ones who have helped adapt the rule set to Fantasy Grounds Unity. So I'd like you guys to please introduce yourselves. I'm not sure who's going to go first, but go ahead and I would like to hear a little bit about your role-playing game experiences and also how you found Fantasy Grounds. So I guess we'll start with Simp since you're the first one on the list here.
All right. Sure. My name is Simon. I've been playing role-playing games, mostly Swedish ones, since I was roughly 13 years old, and I'm going 40 this year, so that's more than 10 years at least, that's for sure. I've been playing mostly Swedish role-playing games, which sort of brought me into the free league games as well, since I've been playing a lot of Symbaroum previously, but also looking at some of their other role-playing games. I'm not sure what made me actually meet or come in contact with Fantasy Grounds the first time, but it was basically when doing the Symbaroum rule set, I guess. I'm not sure why we actually chose Fantasy Grounds. I think it was because it was a downloadable client more than anything.
Oh, okay. How about you, Valier? Same question.
Yeah, so my name is Alexander, and I'm practicing this hobby for maybe more than 20 years now. I started with what we know here as choose your own adventure books, but those were never enough. And I started with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I think. Yes, AD&D, the second edition. And then I suddenly discovered that this is it. This is my hobby. And since I like variety when it comes to the hobby and to entertainment and games, I started exploring many other systems because the world is not just D&D. So D&D 3, 4, 5, but also many other publishers and systems. Recently, I found out that the free league games are really the kind of games that I do enjoy a lot. The right mix between system, number crunching, story, atmosphere that they convey. It's not just the next sci-fi, the next fantasy game. They are different. They have their own unique vibe. This is what I really like. How I started with Fantasy Grounds? It happened. It happened when I moved abroad because until then we were face to face, and at some point I had to move, and the online playing was the only way to do it. So the platform that we selected back then for a 40k campaign, it was fine, but a lot of limitations. So we were looking for something with a lot of capabilities, extensibility, automation. A friend of mine actually showed me 5e rule set, and since then I never turned back.
That's great. So how much affiliation do you guys have with Free League Publishing? Is it just a contract, or are you guys kind of in the middle between Smiteworks and them, or are you guys your own entity, or how does that work?
So historically, actually, my contact has mostly been straight with Free League, and I think actually I approached them, or if they approached me, I don't remember. I think they actually approached me when we were doing the Symbaroum rule set for Fantasy Grounds. That's how it all started, basically. So we had almost no connection at all with Smiteworks when we first started. And then from me doing the Symbaroum rule set, Valier came in contact with me, and that's when we started doing the year zero engine games, basically. So we work more with Free League than we do with Smiteworks, I'd say.
Okay, so you guys are kind of like the adaptation team, I guess, and
Yeah,
making sure that the rule set is compatible with what Unity has, and also with the play styles and such.
yeah,
That's great.
I'd say so. And I think that Valier or Alexander probably is the one that has the most extensive knowledge of that in the rule sets that we apply, since he's sort of the team lead plus doing all of the content work. So
Right.
He knows it all.
So, what is some of the design software or tools that you guys use when you are writing or editing or doing the layout with the rule sets?
All right. Yes. So, what is the toolset? So, what I'm using for all the coding activities, this is Visual Studio Code. I'm doing there the XML work. I'm doing there the Lua coding. Another program that I'm using is alternative of Photoshop and InDesign. This is Affinity Photos, and I think it's called Publisher because sometimes we work with the raw files. This is where the whole image processing and drawing things happen. GIMP is also a tool that I use from time to time. There's some nice filters and things that you can do much more easily. Let's not forget Notepad++.
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah.
And of course, last but not least, the Fantasy Grounds Unity client. There is a lot of reloading happening during development.
yes.
That's great. What one of you is doing more of the artwork and the layout, and the other one is doing the programming. So, what is the who did the theme or who did all the buttons and those sort of things?
Alexander.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm mostly the code monkey here.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Alex, you're doing the theme and the pictures and all those things.
Yes, that's right. The layout, the images, the graphics. This is my doing.
That's great. What I noticed about the rule set is that it is a little different than our traditional virtual tabletop games that most of us are accompanied. We're so used to using Fantasy Grounds in such a way that it may or may not apply to a rule set that's more narrative, such as Alien or even one of the other, like Call of Cthulhu, for instance. So, what would you say, or what can you both talk about as far as what can we expect with the Alien rule set as opposed to some of the others?
Well,
yep.
You go ahead.
I was going to say that first there are two aspects of the rule set. It's first, of course, the graphical, and then the functional. With the rule set, with the overall feeling and look of the rule set, the goal was to represent this unique feeling and atmosphere that you have when you're watching the Alien movies. This retro futurism. And also stay true to how certain design choices were made in the printed publication. So this was one of the directions that we are aiming for when it comes to the layout of the sheet, the sheets, the windows, the overall rule set, and then of course comes the automation, the degree of automation that we have in the rule set. Getting advantage of all the Fantasy Ground capabilities, the combat tracker, the party sheet, the character sheet system, all those things. So, depending on the experience of the game mother or the players or the victims, starting a game on Alien can be pretty smooth and fluent, or it can be a little bit bumpy if you haven't, let's say, researched what kind of game Alien is, because in essence, Alien and many other 3D games are a little bit different than what we know in D&D, Pathfinders, and other games.
It's funny because from the standpoint where I come from in Swedish role-playing games, this is the standard. Like the D&D, where you have the hexagon map or the squared maps or the hexagon maps. That's something that we basically never did for me. So I guess it feels more intuitive for us Swedes that are used to this kind of role-playing games that are more sort of thematical and dramatic and suspenseful, I guess.
Yeah, I've started to realize that because I'm coming from like a D&D background. So it really is an eye opener for me. I have to basically kind of change the way I think and start to think about how to tell the story without needing all those other things, like the battle maps and tokens and such. You can use those in Alien, but they're not as important as the story and the imagery that you can show.
But there is also another thing that is really, really different, and this is how the adventures or the scenarios are presented in, let's say, in standard D&D module or campaign or adventure. You have those scenes laid out for you in certain order. You have everything written. You have something as a things that you just need to go with the players through. While in Alien, it's very freeform. It's like a sandbox. You have list of events that might or might not happen. Nothing is fixed in stone, and the game master needs to prepare for many type of situations that might happen during the play. It's not scripted. It's quite open-ended, let's say. So it's for some might be more challenging to run, for some much more fun. Depends on the point of view and what you're looking for. But I think this is one of the great things about those cinematic scenarios, and the way that you have a lot of content to work with, so you don't have to invest a lot of time in preparation. Everything is done there. You have the events, you have the backstory, you have the characters. Now you need to make your own unique version of this adventure.
That's interesting that you say that, because doing some research, I've listened to probably about 4 or 5 different podcasts with the author, Andrew, who'll be joining us shortly, by the way. He did describe how he wrote some of the content, and it seemed to be that he did have that in mind, where he wrote these different ifs, ands, and buts just in case, and it made it to where you have that more open-ended sandbox feel instead of a scripted outcome. So it definitely must have the point must have been made, because you're really actually describing how he described the way he wrote, such as the modules that he's participated in. So that's
Absolutely.
really cool.
I think the goal is achieved, because you have if you're using the scenarios, you have Act 1, 2, and 3. You have certain events that happen, like mandatory events, and you have a lot of optional events, and it is up to you how many of those events you want to incorporate, when they should happen. There are some guidances for the game others. It's excellent, but in the end, you decide. It's your call, and I think all of those events and the way they're presented are great. Depending on how much time you have to play, or what kind of players you have, you can tailor the scenario the way you want it. It's great.
Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Yes, welcome.
So we were just discussing the writing technique, and I did some research on some of the content that he wrote, and it seemed
disconnected.
That's okay, but it seemed like he was able to get that point across as he was writing this type of content for the role playing game. So that's good. So that it definitely came through, which is, hey, hello, hey, Andrew.
Can you hear us, Andrew?
He might have to check his settings, but
yeah.
So yeah, we were just discussing how the writing of the Alien rule set was more open and less streamlined for railroading people through the game system without forcing them to do things. So that's pretty cool.
And I think that if you've been playing like World of Darkness or maybe the Genesis system, you're going to be more familiar with it than if you've only been playing like D&D.
Right. I kind of like to. Sometimes some of the things remind me of Call of Cthulhu, especially the horror and the scary aspect of it. Also, I had on a couple days ago, Sunday, we had and the Vason author. She was a really good guest, and she was talking about some of the horror elements, and I can see that kind of coming through the rule set too. Is kind of has that. that vibe or that feel for suspense and the unknown and that sort of thing. I don't know if you two have talked to Gabrielle, but she's a really nice lady.
No, I haven't, unfortunately.
Hey, Andrew, welcome back. So we can hear you keying up, so we're not sure what's up, but
hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. Yes. Hey, welcome.
Hey, okay, I could not figure out how to make that work. I'm so sorry.
No problem. So,
welcome.
Yeah, so these are the two developers that have adapted the Alien rule set to Fantasy Grounds Unity. We were just discussing how how you wrote the Heart of Darkness, for example, how that's coming up, where you kind of make a loose ends approach to the scenarios as opposed to railroading people. So you have all these ifs, ands, and buts, and it comes through in the gameplay, which is really good because it gets the point across that you were trying to make when designing and writing the content.
So that's awesome, because I mean that's literally my biggest challenge, because my challenge is stopping doing that, because I sit there thinking there's always some jerk who's going to go east when you want to go west, and I want that jerk not to accidentally, and I say jerk pleasantly because I'm that jerk half the time. I want that jerk to not accidentally make the GM not know what to do, so I want those options there. And I have to laugh because every now and then there's one or two detractors who say that it feels like it's too railroaded, and I'm like, how, man? So I'm glad you guys see it.
Yeah, organically they mentioned that without me bringing that up, because I have watched a lot of your podcasts over the last couple of weeks to do some research, and one of the recurring themes is that you have this kind of feel that you're trying to put across in the rule set, and they actually hit the nail on the head. So it came across. So that's kudos to all of you. We were also
who's here with me? I'm okay. Andrew Gaska.
Yep.
Who else is here?
Go ahead, guys.
My name is Simon Lundmark, Swedish programmer, basically.
Hello, Simon.
Hi.
And I'm Alexander. Hi.
Hi, Alexander.
So these two are the team behind the adaptation for it, and they're kind of working between Free League and Smiteworks. And then for myself, I'm just kind of the host. I just want to get all of you together. I think it's important to have the developers, the author, the publisher, the players, everyone together in one area. And that's really what this is about. Not really prestige or to advertise and show off, but we got a little of that in the background. But we really want to use a virtual tabletop platform to tell a story, and not really so much always have to worry about all the mechanical things. Although those are pleasantly helpful in a lot of cases. But we were talking about the Alien rule set being a lot more narrative and thematic, as opposed to counting squares and worrying about bonuses as much as you would with, like, let's say Pathfinder or D&D. And one of the things I've heard you say in other content, Andrew, is that you kind of want to approach this game a little differently than you would coming from a D&D standpoint. And I think that's one of the things I want to talk about with you guys during this show. And also at the end, I'd like to talk about some resources and those sort of things, and give you guys a chance to talk to each other about the adaptation and the sort of maybe some requests or whatever it might be. I have a request too, but I'll wait till the end. So Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about your foray into role-playing games? I got these two kind of under that umbrella. So what was your impetus? I know you've been running games for a long time, but what was your origins like?
My origins, as in an origins as a gamer, or coming
as
on
a gamer.
Board to work on a project as a gamer?
Gamer, yeah.
1983, the red box for Dungeons and Dragons, basic D&D. That's where I started. Yeah, everybody in school that was, nerds but cool nerds, which wasn't me. I was just nerd, was playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so my mom got me the red box for Christmas, and then I nagged these guys until they let me come to play, and I came with my character sheet that my mom had Xeroxed at work for me, and they're like, "We play advanced Dungeons and Dragons. We don't play this basic crap." And I was like, oh, there's a difference. I had no idea, but during playing that, like, so on first level, I've never played before, and they throw me. They're already on a thing to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and I'm suddenly in the Temple of Elemental Evil. And by the end of the session, they had all got mad at each other over who had the chips and whatever, and so they had taken it out on each other by killing each other's characters. And I just backed away slowly and was like, okay, I don't want to be part of this.
Such classic teenage RPGs.
Yes, it's funny.
I was 11 at the time, so yeah.
It's funny you've come full circle. Now that's kind of a thing in Alien where you have this adversarial potential between characters where you might fight each other in the game. That is something, right?
That's funny. That's funny you say that, because I had started to think about that. I wonder if, like, this whole idea of let's put each other over with the agendas. Maybe it's like childhood trauma come back to me.
So that's an important thing about getting the feel or the mood of running the game and playing in it, is that you're not always going to have an alien. That's one thing I've learned over the watching your podcasts and your interviews. But you can also focus on these relationships between the characters. One of the things I picked out of the main Alien movie was the artificial intelligence on the ship. I think they called it the Mother or something like that. It was almost. Mother. Yeah, it was almost like what was that? It was the I'm trying to remember the other movie that had the artificial intelligence, a sci-fi movie. I can't think of it right now.
2001. How?
Yes. Kind of like that. That makes for an interesting interface for having kind of a way to interface with the players without being the game mother. So you could essentially kind of play through that interface to put things in the game without acting like you're just a regular person telling the story. It's sort of like a tool. And then, of course, the robot.
Mother's secret orders will
That's right.
make sure that you receive the information that the company wants you to receive rather than the information you need. So
That's right. And then I was thinking,
such a brilliant part.
Yes, it's really cool. I'm really excited to know that it's not all just aliens. Like, you have viruses, you have this conflict between company and employees, and then you got the little cliques of people that hang out in the crew. And then you even have this separation of, you're all kind of combined with survival, but you kind of have the separation of what type of work you do, right? Like, you have the engineer guys, that you have the desk people, and then you have the grunts, and then you have the military, and then you have this company. So it's almost like factions within a small area, like a space station or a ship. So I think playing off of that, it makes this rule set a lot more well-rounded. It's almost like having your class system in D&D in a sense, but it's not. It's kind of more of a story thing than mechanics, I guess.
Well, one of the things, I don't know if you're aware, I've also written a couple of Planet of the Apes novels. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's very interesting that I've seen in interviews about the filming of the first movie is that when they break for lunch, like, everybody who was in chimpanzee makeup all ate at the same table with the chimpanzees. And the same thing with the orangutans and the gorillas. It's like we subconsciously break off into groups that, this is familiar.
That's what uniforms does for you.
Yeah, and clearly it was a total subconscious thing for these guys, because they're just actors. They're not. I'm not going to go hang out with the gorillas. It's not about that. It's about we just tend to do that. So that separation and classism is a big part of definitely a big part of Alien. And it comes down to even what I was talking about with the nerds and the cool nerds. They sighed and let me into their group because I wasn't one of them. There was this distaste for me, and then I had distaste for them afterwards, because, like, you know what, I'm going to run this thing and I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen when I play games. And then instead I wrote games that happens, and never mind. So
I think I kind of broke that theme a little for myself. I hung out in the library, but I also hung out with all the cool smokers, and I hung out with the punk rockers and the break dancers and all the different types of tropes of people that you had in school, but I can definitely see that coming up in the game where you have the different ways of looking at things. It's kind of like, oh, let's do this, and then the crew's like, yeah, let's do that, and then the engineer or the guy that's doing all the work says, well, hold on a second now. You want to do what?
Even in Alien 3, all the prisoners said, shut up, 85, you're a goddamn company man.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But I think that's sort of like one thing that is really capturing about the Alien rule set is that it puts such a heavy emphasis on having your role rather than having your class. Like, and that forces people into interacting with each other in a way that you don't see in a regular D&D session, for example. Because in a D&D session, like, I think that most of the options are usually quite easy. Like, it's not hard to make a decision. While in a game like Alien, a lot of decisions are usually really hard.
Yeah, especially when they're centered around survival and not just slaying the next dragon. You gotta. Exactly. Yeah, so you got environmental challenges, and then you have these like social challenges, and then you have an alien thrown in there just to make things worse. So, yeah, I like the grit of Alien and those types of games because you don't get, like you say, you don't really get that in traditional RPGs. Usually, when you ask someone to play a character, they're looking at, what kind of weapons can I get, and those sort of things, as opposed to what is my role on the ship, what is my personality, and how do I fit in with this group.
It's a difference between heroic gaming and survival gaming.
That's right. I think you definitely. I mean, you definitely wrote it that way. You tried to put that grit in there, which is kind of a nice relief from the typical. I'm mostly a D&D 5e guy, but I'm definitely expanding my horizons, and I have played other systems. I used to really be into Cyberpunk 2020, and so I kind of miss those elements, and that's what Alien does for me. Anyways, it kind of brings back that grit that I miss, and the darkness, and not always having these happy, cheery, healing moments, which is something that I kind of get annoyed actually with the healing and the ability to avoid death, basically.
Well, I mean, I tell people who are like, but it's so easy to die in the cinematics that Ripley only made it through 3 cinematics before she died, so it's built in. It's always each game is an attrition thing, and it's like, so I recently read something in one of the groups that someone was saying, my players really want to play the cinematic adventures, but they want to make their own characters for it. And it's like, sure, but there's like the agendas and everything. That's all that stuff is tied to make that work the way it does. So it's like the GM can't just say, okay, make whatever character you want and expect the game to go the same way it would go otherwise. It has to be a balance thing. And if someone wants something else, they have to remove something that we have in there to counter what it is that they want instead. So it's a whole reworking thing, and all this stuff is balanced. And if you're going to take your time to make your own character for this, the cinematics are written brutally. So okay, you had your character and they lasted 1 act, and now you need a new character. So I don't know if it makes sense to be switching that out like that or not. It's a good question though. The cinematics were designed to be like a movie where at the end you're lucky to have 1 or 2 survivors.
Yeah, that's I like that grim ending. I always like the the invasion of the body snatchers with Donald Sutherland at the end. Those sort of things are really bone chilling, so to speak. You might survive, but you might have some kind of virus, or maybe you have an implant, or maybe you get experimented on or something. So the ending may not really be a good ending either. I mean, a positive ending, anyways.
So there is some hope for survival.
Little, but the type of survival, I mean, the quality of life may not be so good. You got to come out of there in a wheelchair or something. That's, I'm not saying wheelchair is bad, but it's just certainly not what you started with. So, one of the
another thing I would like to add about the scenarios, what I really like, and a lot of people I played with really enjoy, is the fact that you have pre-generated characters. You have their story, their motivations, things like that. Now, this is really something that makes you start to think, get into the role, and really role-playing, not just rolling dice, and go with the scene and the monsters that are in the story. I really like this this part.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Andrew.
No, it's not about body count. It's about one of the things that I've really enjoyed seeing with players. I'm agreeing with you completely with what you're saying. Other games are about body count, but like this is I've seen players like take the agendas they're given and run with that in ways I never would have expected, but it's totally true to what was written on that card. It's their personality having this. It's like, it's like an improv hook. You give them this one thing and they take it and they run off in a completely different direction someone else would have. But you're like, yeah, that's totally what that character would have done based on that agenda. And so it's not that. That's where I've heard some people say, oh, it's kind of railroad because my character has to do this. Yeah, but how's your character going to do that? And if you decide you don't want your character to do that, it just means you don't get the story point for that. It's not like you're bound to it. It's just hey, let me help you get in this direction by giving you something to work with. And I think because of that, it's easier for people who don't have a role-playing experience history to jump in there, because at first you sit there and you're like, I don't know what to do. I know I love Alien, and then I hand you this agenda and you're like, oh, okay, I can do that. And you take it and you run. So, yeah.
So I got a question for you. I want to make this a little more organic. I think I was going to wait till the end of the show, but I kind of like to answer questions as they come up too sometimes. So Lucas Jack of None on Twitch asked for Andrew, was it your interest from the start to kind of get the Alien RPG, the books, Titan books, and all the films on the same page? And how did that come about?
Absolutely, it was. It's what I always wanted to do. I mean, I started as a franchise consultant. Well, all right. So I wrote a Planet of the Apes novel, and the franchise director, Josh Izzo, over at 20th Century Fox in 2015, he read it and said, I think you know this property better than we do. You want to come on as a consultant? So I was like, absolutely. And it was shocking to me that he actually read it, because usually it's like an intern will read it or something, and I started doing stuff for that, which led to stuff for Alien. And then I wrote the Predator Bible in-house for Fox. They didn't have a Predator Bible at all, and with the movie that was coming out in 2018, they wanted to have something. Obviously, the movie didn't do as well as they expected, so there was no reason for it actually in the end. But there's a 700-page document out there that hopefully will be seeing the light of day. But regardless of any of that, I wanted to push integration when I was doing that over there in the first place, because I was like, there's so these awesome things that have been in this stuff, and maybe something goes off on a tangent, but there's something in the core of that idea that can be used and brought into the quote canon, end quote. So when the opportunity came to talk to the fire team people, we'd actually reached out to several people. Dark Horse was one of them, and at first I don't think any of these people knew. They were like, oh, okay, role-playing game, that's nice, never mind, and that was before they knew what we were going to do, because I had actually shopped the role-playing game idea around to several companies, and RPG companies were like, oh, it's a one-hit wonder, no one will ever, it won't make money past its first book, and that's it. And nobody wanted to pick it up. And then Free League picked it up, and their mindset was in sync with mine, with what type of things we should do and how we can make this huge. So yeah, we had started talking out to other companies, and they were like, okay, this is weird, we don't really know what to do with this, and they kind of ignored us. But once the thing started doing well, the fire team people were like, hey, we're already using your book as a source book for the stuff we're writing. Can you look over the stuff we did and give us some pointers and whatnot? And not only did I give them pointers, but I took some of the lore that they wanted to do that was a little weird to be suddenly showing up in their game, and I planted it in our products so that by the time that their game came out, it would be like, oh, well, of course that's part of it now. It wouldn't seem so shocking that people are like, why are they doing that? And I had a relationship with Titan because my second Planet of the Apes novel came out through them. So I had been talking with them about doing another book of something. We were just trying to find the right property. And it's funny because at first they didn't really get what the role-playing game was. But then when they started seeing the awards, they were like, well, wait a second. Okay, what is this? And when they got it, they were like, all right, let's do something. And I pitched the idea of doing the adventures in the back of the next 3 novels. And Steve Safel over at Titan was like, yeah, let's do that. That's great. So, I coordinated it with Free League. Free League gave it the thumbs up, and then there we are. It's like, I'd love to do that with the Marvel comics too. I'd love to do it with all the stuff. I think that the future of intellectual properties is coordinated, expanded universes, and I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has shown that. So I think it's something that fans wanted, and I just thought, like one of the novels that's coming out, in the middle of the novel they mentioned, hey, we're getting a distress call from this place. We should send someone there. And then they never deal with it again. And that was organically in the novel already. And so I read it, and I was like, well, this is where the adventure is. Because the PC team will be the team that's sent to do that thing that they mentioned and never got brought up again. So now your PC team will be part of the plot of that novel. And so you watch Fire Team, you play the Fire Team game, and they mention what General Vaughn did 20 years ago, and you're like, this Marine team with General Vaughn did X, Y, Z, and you're like, hey, wait, they're talking about what I did in the game. You read the novel, and you're like, oh, hey, look, there's where I launch. It's you're part of this universe now. And Disney specifically is trying to make everything, all the entertainment as immersive as possible. That's what the Star Wars Galactic Cruiser Hotel thing is about also. So when I started bringing these ideas to them, they're like, this is great. So it's something that I've always believed in. And it's just because of the Marvel success, I think, is why people are like, hey, yeah, no, let's try that. Instead of like, no, this is my corner of it. I'll do what I want over here. I don't want to work with you. Now everybody's like, oh, wait, people want this. So
sometimes it takes a person from role-playing games to point these things out, I think. One of the things that I thought about was I think I had heard that you were working on a similar product or a list for Alien, for having the canon and what's partially canon and what is and what isn't. Then I also discovered that you don't really rule out anything else. You just kind of compartmentalize it to where, yes, this is part of the game, but it's a little less closer to the center of it, I guess, is kind of the takeaway. So you don't exclude anything. You just try to find ways to adapt it to what's already there.
Yeah. So, it's what I call barroom canon. So it's like, this comic that you love from the 90s, which absolutely could no longer fit in canon because of the later films, which made it clear that couldn't have happened. You love that comic. So you're kind of mad that comic doesn't exist anymore. Well, the comic, as you read it, is the tale told by somebody who told his drunk friend at a bar while the music was so loud that no one could hear what he's saying properly. So some version of that thing happened, and another way of dealing with this also is there's some people who really like the William Gibson Alien 3 rather than the film. So I've put it in the universe where it's possible for you to have either of them happened. There's definitely Radina Station and Anchor Point Station. The first Anchor Point Station definitely blew up shortly after LV-426 had its problem with Hadley's Hope blowing up. Whether or not Hicks was there or died on Fury 161 and then Alien 3, that's ultimately up to your campaign. As far as Disney's concerned, as far as 20th Century Studios is concerned, yeah, the movie is what happened. But the freedom, building it in the way I did with rumors and stuff, allows you to cater to what you'd prefer. If you think David should have made the alien, then he made the alien in your campaign. If you think he shouldn't have. He didn't. Then it's all open to interpretation. and yet somehow I managed to make it not seem wishy-washy, which I'm very happy about, because it could have very easily seemed like whatever you like, and we don't want it to be like that. It's just about some people heard this on the frontier and some people heard that, so you grab whatever you like and you run with it.
Yeah, it's good material for game mothers too. If you guys are going to run this content, there's so much, 40 years worth or more of plus all of the other sci-fi material to draw upon to help you run your games and inspire you to create your own stories. It's out there. I mean, it doesn't have to be absolutely canon. It can really be just borrowed elements from every game or every movie or every video you've watched. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's really cool. So I thought about, would you ever print that? And then I thought, that's kind of a silly question, because printing a Bible like that would be almost foolish in a sense that it's going to be evolving and changing and having things added to it. So if you print that, that's tough.
The tier system that we used at 20th Century Studios and that I used for the game, of what is absolute canon, what is tier 1 canon, what is tier 2 canon, and what do those tiers mean. That's all on my Rogue Reviewer website.
Yeah.
So you can, and I update it as something new comes out.
Right.
So that's roguereviewer.wordpress.com, and you look up defining canon with one N, and the article should come up if your listeners want to check that out.
Yeah, I put that in the chat description because I did look through that, and I thought it was interesting, because I thought, well, this is more like a wiki as opposed to a printed product, because once you print it, it's out of date, right? So
yeah.
So I thought that it was a good resource to have. So I included that in the links, as well as your Twitter and that sort of thing. So design, yes, no problem. So design consultant or story consultant, or just knowing stuff consultant. So I know that you said you don't really have a desk, so you just work out of home, and you get calls and conferences and workshops and conventions maybe here and there and things like this. This kind of adds to your street cred, I guess, to do these and interact with the people that are using the products that you're writing for, which I think is an important step in developing content. And being that you're also a gamer helps a lot too. So I'm really happy that you chose to join with us. And this also gives our developers here, our friends, a chance to ask you questions about the IP, and also maybe it will help them adapt better or more creatively as they're developing for Alien and for rule sets like that. So this is the real reason why I've done this, is not just to have you on the show, but to give game masters, developers, people that want to write a little bit of inspiration, and to kind of give them a feel for the tools and the methods and how this stuff works, behind the scenes, because I think a lot of us end up just being consumers, and we're just looking for the alien. We don't really understand the whole concept of what goes into this, and I really like to do these kind of talks with all of you, so that we're not just talking about an alien running around killing people. We're talking about the process of how it comes up to that point, and then the aftermath of that too.
Yeah, see, and thinking, and I appreciate that, and I really like interacting with the audience about this stuff. Like I that's why I do all the conventions I do, and I'm always in the Facebook groups and everything. And if anybody here wants to reach out to me on Facebook personally, Andrew E. Gaska, send me a message, tell me where you heard me, and I'll answer your questions privately. I do that as well, including you guys. The developers that are here, if you have questions for me, feel free.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I love this stuff. So I'm not just, this is never just a job for me.
That's great.
I actually have some questions. I'm curious. Since you teamed up with Free League, I'm curious if you've played any Swedish RPG or Swedish originating RPG before doing this?
No, I actually had stopped playing for 10 years because my workload. I worked for Rockstar Games, and it was demanding. So I had stopped playing role-playing games for a long time. I did not think I was ever going to be writing role-playing adventures professionally. I was just nerd of this universe, so I wanted to write the setting stuff. And when whoever was supposed to write Chariot of the Gods, I don't know if they left or were let go. I don't know what the detail is, but all of a sudden one day Thomas called me and said, "Hey, the writer is gone for for this adventure. I think I named Chariot of the Gods, actually, but whatever it was, they're like, do you want to take a stab at it?" And I was like, well, I GM'd for 20 something years, and I made up. I have these giant ledgers, because my grandmother had all these old ledgers that were not used in her apartment basement, in her house apartment building's basement for some reason. So I had all these giant ledgers that were full of crazy person handwriting role-playing adventures. So I was like, it was not like I haven't done this, I just never did it professionally. So I gave it a shot, and luckily Chariot worked out. Sorry for the long-winded answer. I tend to do that.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. It's funny that you mentioned Rockstar. I work in the games industry as well. Actually,
who did you work for?
So currently, I'm consulting for Arrowhead Game Studios, but I've been working with Fat Shark, Mojang, and some other studios in Sweden as well.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
So worked on the Vermintide series, for example. But so another question though: did you ever play any World of Darkness role-playing games, or been GMing any of those? Sorry, couldn't really hear you there.
The question, Andrew, was: have you played in like World of Darkness or run any of those? He might be losing
connection. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It feels like I've been playing a lot of, or I used to play a lot of World of Darkness, or mostly Vampire the Masquerade and Vampire Dark Ages, and I feel like there's bits of that in the Alien RPG somehow.
I'm also wondering if he's played Call of Cthulhu at some point, or was a storyteller in that, because or a keeper, because he has that vibe.
It's funny. I have like 10 different books at least that are Call of Cthulhu, but I've never even opened them.
I know. I understand.
I have Masks of Nyarlathotep, and I have what's it called, the Orient Express as well. Mm-hmm. I have both of those and all the stuff to run them, but I haven't ever gotten there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I had the developer on for that, and we talked about how massive that was. It was like 700 pages to adapt. It took him over a year to bring that into Fantasy Grounds. So, yeah, it was interesting to talk to him about that process, and it's kind of why I wanted you guys to be a part of this panel here, because you guys have that perspective that myself or Andrew might not have. Is like, what is it like from a developer standpoint? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of important that we know that too, especially if we're using Fantasy Grounds in this case. This is definitely a way to tell a story. So while Andrew's kind of MIA for the moment, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the Fantasy Grounds aspect. Mm-hmm. So I have the Fantasy Grounds screen up. Obviously, these sort of things, I created this graphic here just for show and tell. Like the Space Marine, I found this picture online that I use for show, not really for anything mechanical. And then the other thing is, like, since I'm a D&D person, I brought in this virtual tabletop map. So I wasn't intending to necessarily use it, but I mean, I went through the work and I put the line of sight on there, and I did all the stuff that you would for like a D&D game. But what I was wondering is if if you would use something like this to tell your story. So what this is a third-party quarantine map. This map was actually made by MapHatter. And what it has here is this flashing emergency light. I have Andrew here as a token. I have one of the, the standard things. I have the Android right here. This is a static image. This doesn't move. It's not a token, but it is, the asset I used. And what I was doing is, when you take possession of these tokens, even if you're not moving them around, you kind of get an idea of what they see in their perspective from their angles. So if you were going to run a kind of a narrative type thing, you could kind of show these and not really worry too much about how many squares they're going or, those sort of things. And then, you can open the door and you would see this alien inside. So if you were the android, you can move inside and talk about what's happening and kind of describe the action. And then I really like the strobe because it kind of gives it that kind of urgency. And I was thinking about combining it with sound. So you have that kind of a background sound, not a bunch of sound effects, but just like a droning sound in the background, and kind of orchestrating this like a puppet show, more or less, not just a virtual tabletop. So that's kind of what the point was here. And then if you get to this room, I have this image that I would kind of tie into
Awesome.
that. So it wouldn't necessarily have to do with, moving around tokens and fighting. It'd be more or less, this is what happens when that door opens, and that's what you see going through there. So it kind of gives you a top-down view and then a straight-on cinematic view without worrying about, moving tokens in place to fight like you would in a normal virtual tabletop like D&D or Pathfinder. So this is just some tools that Fantasy Grounds or other virtual tabletops can use to tell a story. And of course, you have all the static images that come out of the books that you can bring into your game and show. But the nice thing about a virtual tabletop is you can add those flashing lights and the steam and the mist. It doesn't have to always be maps. You can use those images and you can place effects on them that kind of bring in this, the immersion that you're looking for. You could actually take this image and put whatever you want on there to make it look like it's part of the game and not just an image. Like, for instance, this lunar lander it has like this green screen effect or night vision on it. So it kind of gives it that old school kind of alien feel to it, as opposed to, let's see, opposed to something like that,
The green screen effect was awesome.
Really. Yeah, so it kind of gives you that, that's the same picture, but this is just the regular virtual. But it does have, I did put this little, embellishments where the steam's coming out, and then I have this kind of rolling, like atmosphere going by, but it's really not for playing like with tokens. It's more or less to kind of show them the drop ship, that sort of thing. So these are things that can be done with virtual tabletop without worrying about all the mechanics. You're just showing the images, you're using them as props. You're kind of doing like a puppet show basically, and telling your story without worrying about all the aesthetics. So Andrew, are you back? I think he's working on it.
Yeah. Something that I really appreciate doing in my games is using sound, for example, or pre-recorded voices and things like that as well. That really helps setting the mood, I think.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
You're back.
Okay. I don't know what has happened, but you guys keep sounding like you're being stuck in the Phantom Zone, like you're echoing like crazy.
Yeah, it's just a Discord. It's a Discord thing.
Okay.
But
yeah, I dropped out twice and I came back, so it's working now. So
cool.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So, Simp, what was your question for Andrew again? We were talking about.
Well, I was curious if you had played or DM'd any World of Darkness.
World of Darkness? No, I don't. I actually don't even know that what we're talking about. World of Darkness.
So that's sort of like Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf.
Oh yeah. No. had those. I had vampire books when I was younger. I have never played World of Darkness. Anything.
that's
Oh, I see. What about Call of Cthulhu? Because I got a little bit of that out of it too. Just wondering if you played. Yeah, we must be giving the robot. Yeah.
Yeah. That happens.
Yeah. Technology.
Yeah. World of internet.
So the you go from the movies to the books and the video games, and then you get these role-playing games, and then you get these hybrid things like virtual tabletop. So that tends to be one of those things that is a natural evolution of playing in virtual tabletop and in role-playing games. So I like the idea that Andrew's actually coming from the GM part of it and kind of going the opposite direction. So he's starting with the role-playing game and kind of going into all the different content instead of the other way around. So
yeah. So I don't think it's common that you hear people going that way when it comes to developing games.
Yeah. So Andrew, we were discussing how you're kind of coming at this from more of a gaming aspect. In some standards, instead of going from the movie to the game to the role playing game, it's kind of the opposite way with you, anyways.
Well, I mean, my approach for this stuff is really more as a novelist than anything else. Like, I've wanted to make sure that everything has this tone to it that just makes you feel like you're there, like talking to you directly, for example, in the text, as if the text is talking to the reader. It has a disarming effect that makes you feel like, okay, wait, I'm here with this guy on a subconscious level. And then the descriptions I use, which I've been told a lot of times, like when something terrible happens, then you're supposed to read a paragraph out loud to the players. I've been told many times that the stuff is making people sick. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's because I'm approaching this as a novelist, and how would I describe this in a novel rather than an alien appears, it's about the mood and all that stuff. So when you say approaching it from a game, what do you mean by that? What am I missing?
Well, what I was thinking is, like, in most cases, when you do get IP that comes down, kind of flows downward, like Fantasy Grounds and virtual tabletop is kind of an evolution of the board game. But what's nice about it is it seems more like almost like the game is helping to define the whole thing, other than just the movies. I mean, obviously the movies kicked it off, and these guys own the rights to the intellectual property, but it's nice to have this approach coming from the writing and the D&D side, or D&D, it's role-playing game side, where it actually helps to make this experience more believable and a lot more credible, and almost like a backward approach, or coming from a different angle, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of properties suffer from a company deciding, hey, we could probably make money off that thing. Let's get it. Now I don't know what to do with it. Bob, do you want to write that? Okay, Bob, write that. And then people are like, wait, what did I just read? What did I just try to play? You see it all the time in properties, and I have a life of nerddom that applies directly to this. So it's something that I'm passionate about, and I think if you're not passionate about your work, it's going to show. So my gaming experience of running games for all those years, absolutely, I'm sure it's been invaluable. There's no question of that. But I think the strongest part that I bring to the table is the novelist stuff. But also I have a degree in fine art because I thought I was going to be an artist when I went to school. So my visual, I write visually because I think visually. So it's just, I just happen to have things that work in this particular case, and it's a roll of the dice whether or not to work on something else, I guess. But and the number one thing I think that drives me on this is that a few years ago, and I won't name names, but an editor I was talking to told me that they didn't think I had the chops to write horror. So I I said, hold my beer.
Exactly. Speaking of chops, can we talk a little bit about Heart of Darkness without spoilers? Can we talk just kind of like a top-down view? Like, what can we expect? I know that the Fantasy Grounds adaptation is in work, and that's about all I can say about that. It's on its way. What are you looking at? July possibly for the official release on the store for Free League, something like that.
Well, you get the PDF now if you pre-order it.
Yes,
but the physical copy is probably July is when it's going to be showing up, and for physical copies, absolutely. What do you call it? So there was a loose trilogy that started with Chariot of Gods and went to Destroyer Worlds and ties up here in Heart of Darkness. But when I say loose trilogy, it also ties into a billion other things because the Colonial Marine, the operations manual campaign spins out of Destroyer of Worlds. And the 3 Titan novels that I'm working on the adventures for all are part of the fallout of the Frontier War from the Colonial Marines book. So, all this stuff ties together, but there's 3 major points we needed to get through. And Heart of Darkness pretty much makes things all make sense that we've had so far and takes us to the next level of what's going to happen next. The challenge was trying to do something like this in a way that I don't know what your players did. I don't know if anybody survived. Every one of you out there has played this in a completely different way. So each adventure has different characters because I don't know who's alive in the next one and who's not. Plus, it centers on a different theme. The first one was space truckers. Second one was military, and the third one is a sense of wonder. It's a scientific team trying to catalog a new life form. I can tell you that the threat that's in Heart of Darkness is a new threat that will be showing its face in lots of stuff in the Alien universe. It changes the playing field a little bit.
Wow.
It's so difficult to talk about these things without giving away spoilers. So
I know. It's okay. I like the grit. When you're talking about the space truckers, I think they bring kind of a foundation to the setting in general. So you have people that are moving freight, but there's a little more to that. So, like for instance, like your scientists have that, like you said, the wonder thing, and then you have the grunts and the Marines that kind of bring the military tactical thing. But the bottom line is these blue collar individuals that have to work from day to day, like most of us in this planet. So bringing that to Alien is a good thing. I heard that you are working on content that is going to help outline more to do with the truckers and space truckers, I guess is what you call them.
Yeah, the current book that's being worked on is about explorers and colonists. So explorers are along the lines of the sense of wonder stuff, but the colonists is, I mean, if the space truckers are the average Joes in the universe, the colonists are the minimum wage below average Joes who basically got talked into going out there and see the universe, and you'll tame this new world, and they're stuck, with grime on their faces, working 2 long shifts in a mine on a planet that has barely an atmosphere. So it's they're the ones who suffer the most in this universe, I think. I mean, the Marines, at least they have guns so they can protect themselves.
Yeah.
The space truckers have a ship so they can go away.
Mm-hmm.
The scientists are usually backed by a corporation or a rich guy or something like that, so they have cool tech. But the colonists are stuck where they are, and if shit hits the fan, I hope I could say that here.
Yeah.
If the shit hits the fan, then they're hitting it with it.
Oh yeah.
So that's the book we're going in next, and then after that, we're going to do the space trucker campaign book.
Nice. I like the idea that colonists actually can bring something to the table. So if you remember in the Alien series, or Aliens, where Newt had adapted to the environment, I think that's one of their greatest strengths is that they know all the little quirks of where they live. So they can survive because of that. And a Marine couldn't survive. A scientist could, a company person. So they have a unique setting, or they know their home basically. It's like a layer advantage, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. That would be something that I would like to see in that type of supplement, is to have that ability. It's like an adaptability feature that gives them that edge of finding places to hide, and knowing the layout, so maybe their travel time is less, or I don't know how it would compute into gameplay, but that they definitely bring something to the table that the others don't.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to have a knowledge of their home, or that what happens at sunset or anything like that, because they're there. They've been there long enough to know what the score is. But the question is that if you have a fully colonist game going, they all know that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It kind of becomes less interesting, I guess.
But I mean, but the guy who works in the atmospheric processor knows something about the atmospheric processor that the guy who is wildcatting doesn't know, and the wildcatter knows what's going on in the mountains and how we could hide there. So everybody has a specific integral part of the information to their colony that is only specific to them. But that's because I first was thinking about things along the lines of what you said, and I was like, but they all live there. So how do we deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't. We actually haven't really done anything. We haven't done any cinematics where you are two Marines and a colonist and a space trucker that are trapped in this thing together. It's all been, you're a group of Marines, you're a group of space truckers, you're a group of colonists, you're a group of explorers, and I wonder how something like that would be handled, because like right now what we've been trying to do is we're looking at each section of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, okay, we want to totally represent this section of the universe with a campaign book and a cinematic, and then we want to go on to another really focused section. But eventually the interest will come where I think it's, if we didn't have this space trucker, we couldn't have pulled this thing off. And if we didn't have this Marine, we'd be dead right now. And thank God that colonist knew where the great was,
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing. And I wonder how many campaigns out there. I don't know if people have done that in their campaigns or not. It's a good question.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because like it's not really a class system, right? Like you don't have your wizard and your
Mm-hmm.
thief and such, but it kind of plays on that idea. And I think if it was written to where everyone has a chance to shine at a certain moment in the game, if they survive, would be a cool culmination of not only of the product but also of the writing. It's kind of like pulls everything together in like almost like a finale that sets everything off.
Well, that's one of the things with the cinematics, with the agendas and the characters' personalities and their skill sets and everything like that. And if somebody wants to, I'm just going to replace them with whatever characters we want. Well, you just kind of killed half the plot, and you also killed half your chances to succeed, because we work in a way. I'm like, all right, so if this guy is this expert in this, then there has to be a way that they can be the person who helps save the day in here. Because I want to give everybody. I'm not like, I'm not writing these characters and saying, all right, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. This is the one who's going to survive. It has to. Every player goes in there with the equal chance of survival. So they each have a benefit to themselves, and a detriment to themselves, and something in that adventure that their skill is going to be the thing that saves the day if they think to use it there. So everybody has a chance that's been baked in there. So what you're talking about works with just personalities and sub skill sets just as much as it does with, say, a class of a colonist versus a class of a Marine. If you're playing a Marine thing, we definitely need a sniper for one thing. We definitely need a driver for one thing. We definitely need a dropship pilot for one thing. We definitely need the android who's going to have the tech skills. So all that stuff will come together. And if one of those pieces goes out of whack, if you lose one of those guys, there has to be a way built into the scenario for people to possibly still succeed without that person. So it's like, it's all these variables that I thought out. It's not just I'm going to sit down and write some really cool things. I mean, I don't know how many times with Destroyer was really my baptism of fire. Okay, because so many things will happen with Destroyer. Like I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews where the way that I originally wrote it is not at all the way it turned out. Because I wrote it about a virus that was breaking out on a colony and nobody knew who was sick, and there were story cards that you'd hand out to people where you just tell them to cough. So like even they don't know if they're sick, but the other players at the table that person across them just coughed. So now you're going to think that guy's got it. And it was all this stuff that I had done, and I wrote this in the fall of 2019, and then we were 3 months into 2020 when Thomas gave me a call and said, "I think we need to rethink Destroyer of Worlds, even though it's done because of COVID."
Yeah.
That was my fault, everyone. I predicted it. So everything got changed. But on top of all that, I wasn't really intimate with the rules until Destroyer. Okay, I didn't write the rules at all. It was Thomas and Nils and Dave and others who worked on all that stuff. I was called in, and the only stuff I did in the rule section was like, can you? They'd call me and say, "Hey, can you this text for your hair and can you make it a little sexier?" So I would, put a comment about don't forget about the thing that's locked in your trunk or something like that. Just so that it didn't read too dry in rule places, and throughout. So that's all I had really done, and I didn't really quite get a grasp on how deadly the alien was until I started writing signature attacks for the newer aliens myself. The ones in the core book were written by Dave Semark, or Semark. I can never get his name right, and it's an ongoing thing with him and I. Dave Semark. He wrote those signature attacks. I've written everything, all the signature attacks after the core book, but he wrote the core book ones. So I had 144 aliens in a location in Destroyer Worlds, and Thomas was like, "You can't do that. You can't do that. They will never get out of there. They will never survive." So I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And then I started, playing with the dice myself, and I was like, "Oh shit." Yeah, no, we made the alien, and in my original write-up thing, I'd said to them, "We need to treat the alien like a force of nature. We need to treat it like it was presented in the first movie," and they did that. But yeah,
they did.
It's a little difficult having the hive of 144 aliens on your ass at once. There might be 144 on your ass in that room, but only 6 are coming at you at the same time, and then you're still lucky if you survive. So it had to be reworked like that. So yeah, I don't know what got us on this tangent, but it was something about game balance or something. I went off on the rails. Sorry about that, guys.
No, it's fine. It's all good. It ties into running the game and how it's presented, and also how it's organized and the process going into designing. So,
there's just all this stuff is really well thought out, and if you're going to change stuff, be aware of it so that you don't get left with a subpar product. If you change A, make sure you know that A affects D and that you change D as well. That's all it comes down to.
I see. So have you yourself used virtual tabletops at all to run anything or play in?
No, I've wanted to, and I haven't yet. One of the things is, I'm writing all the time. I'm working on stuff. I'm working on the next the Colony book right now. I'm working on the Titan adventures that are going in the back of those books. I'm working on the Terminator role-playing game. I've got a bunch of other games that I'm working on that I'm not allowed to say anything about yet. So it's like playing time has been rare. The most time playing or GMing that I'm doing is usually when there's an event. Like I game mastered a charity event at Gamehole Con last October, and Dragon Con. I was up on stage with Anthony Rapp from Star Trek and a bunch of other people playing Dungeons and Dragons, which was surreal. I didn't know that's what I was going to be doing. That's what on this time. I go there and there's a theater filled with people, and it's like 6 nerds on a 6 nerds, some of them famous, some not, sitting at a table on a stage playing D&D. It was surreal. But yeah, so no, I haven't been able to try any virtual stuff yet. But I'm very interested in it. I think it's an awesome concept. And I was looking at what you were. I couldn't talk because of the echo thing, but I was looking at what you were showing with the little tile stuff and everything. That was really cool.
It just kind of gives you another tool to use to tell the story. And then, obviously COVID kind of nailed this in that this is here to stay. It's not just a fluke or a fad. And I think that this hybrid play where you can use your television and then you can play around a table and just have this content on your laptop and not have to lug around 50,000 books. Now, I do like having books to flip through and kind of read in bed, but I also like the flexibility of just being able to pick up my laptop and go somewhere. And I don't need internet with this particular platform. I can just hook it up to a TV or something and have my entire library there, including my photos and all my notes and everything in one place.
That's great.
That's why I like these tools. Is they all have something good to help with telling the story. And I was trying to point out the fact that you don't have to use Fantasy Grounds as a tactical battle map. You can use it as like a puppet show or use it to show images and throw some dice around. You don't even have to really use the mechanics if you don't want to. And I don't mean to discredit our developers here, because they work very hard to get that working and to be used in Fantasy Grounds. But just having the text, the pictures, and some dice to throw around is probably the most important aspect of any role-playing game in virtual tabletop. So
awesome. Yeah, I definitely have to get more involved in it.
Yeah, if you ever want just Fantasy Grounds aspect of it, there's a lot of other options. But if you ever want to do this particular one, which I like because I don't have to be online in case I can't get on. But we're this community that we're talking in right now is kind of something I founded accidentally. Kind of just fell into what it is. We have quite a few members here, and the main claim of fame here is to help you learn the platform and how to use it effectively. We did this as a frustration, to be honest. We were kind of upset. We didn't understand what this platform can do. And once you get into it and you understand its capabilities, it becomes a lot more clear that as a game master, it was definitely written for the game master. It makes it a little easier to run content and not have to lug around a bunch of books. Or you can take it camping or something if you have batteries. And so that's kind of a cool thing about having it. So it's an evolution of your product. It's almost like, I wouldn't say it's the last in line, but it's definitely further down the chain. I mean, you've been talking about this rule set for at least 3 years that I know of. And it definitely hasn't died out. It's evolved. And you have these two talented developers here with us that have taken that same content and brought it to another audience. And it's really important that you have these dialogues and we talk about this stuff, because this is really what, when the rubber meets the road here, kind of the stuff we're talking about now. So do you guys have any other questions for Andrew? Or Andrew, do you have any questions for us?
Not really, to be honest.
Okay. Andrew, do you have any questions about the community or the content or Fantasy Grounds or anything? Okay.
Maybe disconnected again.
Yeah, that's possible. Valier, how about you? You've been pretty silent the last half an hour. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm listening to Andrew. It's quite interesting to know behind the scene things when they're developing the modules. Yeah.
Yeah, this is really why I wanted you guys to go. It isn't just about Fantasy Grounds. It's also about, the whole process. And you guys are like in the center of that. So you get the entire experience and not just one side, or only one or two things. You get the author's opinion, you get the people who use it opinion, and then you get your own opinion mixed in there. So it's good to have this kind of dialogue with you guys and with Andrew, because it really makes for a more complete rule set and experience for those that choose to use this as their for entertainment. So I'm really happy that all of you have made it here. and that you've taken the time out of your evening. I know it's getting late in the EU. Are you guys both in Sweden?
No, only me, I think.
Yeah, I'm not located in Sweden.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
You're in Eastern Europe, Valier?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So
I
Andrew,
think I'm back.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I was.
hello.
So I was just saying that if you had any questions for them or for about the community, or anything, or you want to plug something, or maybe you want to let us know about anything, that this would be the time for it.
Got you. Well, as I've said before, people can always reach out to me on Facebook. When you don't just send me a message to say hi, because I'm going to ignore that. Send me a message that says, "Hey, I'm a fan and I listened to you on this," or something, and then I'll accept and we'll talk. Because there's always somebody who wants to borrow some money so that they can escape some evil overlord in some foreign country, and I'm not going to talk to those people. I don't know if you get Facebook messages like that, but I do.
No, fortunately I don't. I get a lot of other emails and phone calls though.
I'm always in the really.
I think you're fading out there.
Yeah, the ether took him.
Yeah. So Andrew, we have a fade out problem here. Yeah. So the interwebs are killing your voice. So while we're waiting for that to
It's like Speedy Gonzalez far away.
Yeah, someone sent him a message. He's probably saying a speech and it's not getting through. Someone in the chat was asking if there's a way to privately message users. In Fantasy Grounds, yes. So when you have players connected to the table, you can right-click on their portrait as the game master or game mother in this case, and you can send them private messages. Absolutely. Yes, that is a thing. So yes, in this platform, yes, you absolutely can communicate with your players privately within the game session. What's also cool is if you had other languages, you could also set that up as kind of a role play thing. Okay, welcome back, Andrew. Hopefully. What time is it in the EU right now? Is it 10?
So in Central European time, it's 20 minutes past 8.
Okay, so not too
Roughly.
late yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, exactly. It's still fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I still have the sun up.
That's a good thing. I'm really happy about the return of spring, which is nice.
Me too.
It's nice to come out of this winter.
Yes, for sure. And I think sun usually goes down at around 9 now. It's gonna be later and later as we move on.
Yeah, and being in that part of you're in Sweden, right? So
yes,
the sun does tend to stay out later. It depends on how far north you are, but during the peak of summer, that is.
Yeah,
so.
in my hometown, there's no darkness during midsummer.
Oh wow!
It's only daylight all day long.
That's really cool. Valier, how are things going on your end? Like, are you doing okay with your development queue? And I know you're working on stuff and behind the scenes. So
yes, we have a lot of things that are happening, many in parallel. We are finishing the conversion of the Heart of Darkness. We work on Forbidden Lands and few other things that are in progress.
Yep.
So a lot of interesting things are planned for 3D games.
That's great.
I think the Forbidden Lands conversion is going to be the hardest one we're doing so far, but I think there's probably features from that we can mold over to the other rule sets as well. So we might see some benefits of doing that into Alien or into Vasan and all of those.
That's great.
Yeah, this is a good remark. Actually, the beauty of the 3D games is that while they're different in their own way, and they're adjusted to serve the specific settings. They have the same core, which allows us to develop those features and make them available in the other rule sets. For example, the PC builder for Alien, it will be now part of the Forbidden Lands rule set on release. It will be ported to Wesen. And the framework that we are doing for the talent automation for Forbidden Lands, because this is the most number crunching system for now, it will be ported to Alien, so we can nail down those talents that are currently manual. And we're also going to enhance some other rule sets with that.
Yeah, we might be. We've been trying to and are planning to do some heavy work on Symbaroum, but it's been a hard nut to crack because of the sort of interrupt mechanics that it has. So
yeah,
but we think we might have a solution for that finally.
That's great. It's good news.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that is challenging in general is that role-playing games in the systems, they look very simple and let's say native or fluent to master for people, but it's completely different for computers then.
Yeah. So there are things that are well done and adapted in a computer virtual tabletop as opposed to the face to face. But then again, there's things that are easier to do face to face than in a computer. So I get it.
For sure.
There's a lot of wants, but there's not a lot of understanding of how it works.
Yeah. And also the fact that role-playing games can be adjusted, right? You can have house rules, or you can play it in a little bit different way according to your needs. So when you're doing this kind of conversion, you also have to think for those groups that are modding the system, or they would like to have a little bit different take on that. So this is one of the hard moments where you have to decide to what extent you want to automate, to what point you want to let it go and give control of certain aspects of the system to the players and game master, and not enforce the rules through some kind of automation which they cannot easily change, for example. So
yeah, the flexibility of a rule set is important, and if it's too constricted, the replay value is lower, so it's harder to play again and again if you cannot modify it or change it. So that is a challenge to have that programmed into the rule set without breaking it, of course. There are lots of exceptions, but I think in general you guys do a pretty good job with figuring those roadblocks out, and you'll get feedback, which is important if you guys are playing Fantasy Grounds. If there's something broken or something doesn't work, just go to the actual Fantasy Grounds forums, and there are bug report threads that you can dump in your logs and your complaints and everything in there. And hopefully the developers will take a look at that and have the time to research and see what's going on. And instead of just going on to Facebook or Twitter or somewhere to rant about your problems,
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah. It doesn't do anything. It's just like talking into the wind. You want to put that in the right place. So if you really need an improvement, or you have a suggestion, or you found a bug, just post it in the forums and leave it at that. And hopefully they'll get around to it, because there's more eyes on it there than you would get in Reddit or somewhere else. So
yeah, I have notifications from the board if somebody posts in the bug threads.
Yes, and I subscribe to those because I like to keep up on what's going on. Even though I don't have anything to do with it, I when I see someone come in and complaining and asking questions about Fantasy Grounds or even a rule set, I can point them to the right direction.
That's good. That's nice.
Yeah, so I don't know everything. I just know enough to get by. So I'd like to invite you guys to kind of become like our rule set experts here. We don't have, I know you guys are busy and you have your own stuff to do, but in the community, we kind of use this as a resource for play testing and for testing and looking at things and maybe recruiting your next players and, suggestions and ideas and all kinds of things. So this is not really a game server per se, but we talk about all the things that go into gaming. So right now we have a channel for other rule sets, which is where a lot of this would end up because we don't have a specific channel. However, being that if they get popular enough and a lot of people are talking about it, then we will make like an alien channel, or maybe just we might do like a thing for Free League Publishing, just do an entire thread for that. But see, that kind of divides your attention between two places. So what I would probably do is put a direct link to the forum. That way you're not looking in 5 places for the same types of things. So you have that problem too. So anyways, I don't know if Andrew's coming back, but I was really glad to have him. I think he was pointing out that you can reach him on YouTube, or not YouTube, but on the Facebook platform. I linked his Twitter account in the description. I also put the search terms for the Fantasy Grounds store for the Alien rule set, so that'll bring up all of them. I also put in the log or the blog about the Alien universe in that link for the canon and different tiers of canon material. And then I also put in the just the basics for the community. So if you guys are watching this in the future, you'll be able to find these. And I think I'm going to put the link to the forum in there as well, for the bug thread, or at least a main thread, just so they know where to go if they have issues. Anything else, you guys, before we get going? I think we're going to call it a wrap.
No, thank you for having us. I'd say it was really fun and interesting, and to meet you and hear all of this as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we were accused of is that we're only D&D, which really isn't the truth. It's far from it. We are game master kind of centered, or dungeon master, or game mother, or whatever, referee.